On today's episode, we have a coach who busted my chops when I was coming into college, got me into to boxing there for a minute. If you're in Athens, you know who this man is. If you're in Atlanta, you will soon know if you don't already. We want to welcome today to the podcast owner and hell of a man, Keith Kepner of Kepner Boxing. How you doing today,
Thank
sir?
you, James. Thank you, James. Thank you, Swan.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So we like to start a little bit left of field. So what is the weirdest food that you've ever eaten, Keith?
Lengua, definitely.
I don't know what that is.
That's tongue, right?
That's right, Savan. The man with the tongue knows the tongue. Yes. I just think he's got this beautiful voice. But yeah, man, I ate lengua when I lived in Mexico one time. And it was prepared in an Asian style because it was done by someone who did Mexican Asian fusion food. And it was very good. But I've heard that if you don't correct for certain things or put a lot of flavor in it or whatever, you get the tonguey texture. It's not so hot. So I never felt the want to or the need to do it again.
What part of Mexico were you living in?
The state of Michoacan, which is mid-Mexico. It's up about 7,000 feet altitude, about 4 hours northwest of Mexico City. And it looks like the Swiss Alps.
That's wild. If you don't mind me asking, were you there training? Were you there just that's what?
Yeah, I did some boxing down there. And so my parents had a dream since 2004 to retire in Mexico. And they finally were able to do it July 2008 and finally got a place to move down. So I went down there with them, took the 2,000 mile drive. And I was boxing at the time and my father was my coach. And so I went with him. And boxing is the second biggest sport in Mexico. So it was a great opportunity. And for the 2 years that I was there, it was a very beautiful experience looking back on it.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. I didn't even know that's how that Michoacan was like the Alps. I'm going to have to go visit there. I went to Tulum.
Oh, it's beautiful, man. Ooh. It's beautiful. Yeah. Rolling hills there's some freaking mountains and it's a lot greener than you think, a lot of evergreens, temperate temperatures. It's like California weather, except without California prices. And it's beautiful, man.
Heck yeah. I'll have to put that on my list, man.
Yeah, dude.
Cool. So next question, what is the wildest, and you can take that in any context you want. It could be the most enjoyable, the most surprising, but the wildest concert you've ever been to?
See, man, I haven't been to many concerts. So, it's just like with anything else. It's like if I go to fights, it's because I'm coaching somebody. Mm-hmm. So I haven't been to a lot of fights either, besides the ones I've coached. But the best concert I've ever been to was a Third Eye Blind concert. And only way I went there is because I got in there free and did some work with somebody in that band. So that was really cool. Hung out with them afterwards and everything else, my wife and I. And it's cool for, you guys are a little bit younger than me, but Third Eye Blind and you might have some nostalgia with that.
They were big. They were huge.
Yeah, man. So that was cool.
Okay.
It wasn't wild, but it's cool.
Yeah, no. Good. Sometimes wild can just be a really dope experience. And that's pretty cool. That's pretty dope. Okay.
Actually, man, I'd say probably like in a punk venue when I was probably like a teenager in Athens, right? Okay. That would be wild. Yeah. So like there's this house in the middle of kind of like down the hill from downtown. And it was like a punk venue for a while. And yeah, so you could say that was probably the wildest, right? Because I was 14, 15 years old, drinking and, doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And, it was wild. Definitely.
Yeah. What's a punk venue if not wild?
It's not a punk venue.
Excellent. All right. So just so we can kind of catch people up to speed, can you give us like a summary of your journey in boxing? What got you in boxing? What kept you in it? What kept you not from jumping into jiu-jitsu or some other form of martial arts and fighting, but just your kind of story as it pertains to boxing?
So absolutely. So growing up, I had no interest in boxing at all. Really, I sparred like maybe twice when I was a little kid because my dad's a boxing coach. But then when I was about 17, I was super sick. I had to drop out of high school because I had Lyme disease and finally got a diagnosis, started treating it when I was 17. And at that time, I was 125 pounds, weak, carpal tunnel in both my wrists and joint pain all the time, sleeping 18 hours a day. And just, it was pretty pathetic. And I wanted to be the antithesis of that. And to me, that is a boxer, someone who's, a badass or a fighter. And at that time, you're talking like mid 2000s or early 2000s. Forrest Griffin from Athens, Georgia, who would go on to be UFC champion, light heavyweight champion. He had trained with my father along with his coaches in boxing and whatnot. And so I saw that and saw that success. And I was like, wow. So I started watching MMA, UFC and whatnot. And my original goal was to just do boxing first and then move on and start training with Forrest's coaches, Rory and Adam Singer. That was the goal. Never happened. I fell in love with boxing and training with my father and found that field of diamonds in my own backyard. And so, but during that time, I was going through extensive antibiotic treatment for Lyme disease and just, loads of antibiotics. And so it was up, down, up, down, up, down. I didn't get anywhere near the success that I wanted with it. And then it all culminated with July 4th, 2010 in Mexico. I got a neck injury, which made it not a good idea for me to box anymore and get hit. I tried to get it fixed. It infringed upon my spinal cord and, caused some loss of function for a short period of time. And and then tried again and got the same symptoms. And so then stopped and started coaching in 2011. And I think I answered it all there.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. That is crazy. Even the idea, when you're going through something like that, I've never gone through some sort of, physical condition, that you have no control over that's been that impactful on my life. But even to have the mindset of like, you know what, fuck this. I'm going to do my damnedest to try to pull back and claw back, to what I had prior and to build even more on top of that. And I think that speaks volumes about the kind of man that you are. Because it would have been easy just to keep lying in that bed and feel sorry. And it's an unfortunate situation to be in, no doubt. But I just really think that says a lot about
Well, you're so right. Because, Savon, like there's this one individual, and to be clear, are you talking about neck injury? You're talking about Lyme disease.
Talking about Lyme disease.
Yeah. So there's this one guy that I've gotten to know and started talking with. He's about 23, 24 years old. Actually, no, excuse me, about 26. And, he got hit by Lyme disease. He was in college. He was in one of the top colleges in the country, super smart guy. All of his friends around him, super driven. And he gets hit by this thing and it just knocks the hell out of him. Unfortunately, he was able to identify it pretty quickly. But still, it's a long treatment. It's a similar organism to syphilis, by the way, guys. So all the stuff that you hear that syphilis can do to someone, make you go insane, it's a spirochete. It drills into cell walls. It does all the same wonderful stuff, except it's not an STD. You get it from a tick. And so anyway, talking to this young guy, I have the fortune of talking to him about once a month. And he had to get out of some of the support groups, some of the groups of people that get together for Lyme and whatnot, because you get caught in this cycle of this trap of, like you said, kind of feeling sorry for yourself. And even though I think deep down in someone's soul or heart, they don't want to do that, it's just if you fall into that pattern, then everyone around you wants to feel sorry for you and wants to help. And you have to almost remove yourself from those people. I remember when I started Kepner Boxing in 2013, I was still having some troubles. And my mom, out of love, was telling me, don't work so hard. Don't try so much. That's what she was saying without meaning to say it. And I had to really separate myself in that situation, or else it was going to smother me with the best of intentions.
Boy, you just said a mouthful. I couldn't agree more.
Do you find, you're talking about these support groups and people kind of reinforcing an identity. Do you see that to be something that maybe we could also extrapolate over to Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous?
I would say so. And in agreeing with you though, I may be, disturbing a lot of people that I know personally who have had a ton of success with it, but I think that possibly they would agree with it as well, is that the benefit with those groups is obviously the community of support. But what's important, though, is that it doesn't become a community of empathy or just everyone feeling sorry for each other and things like that. And I think it can be really negative. And to give you an example, like during the pandemic, I went into this one group for Lyme, and just to be a part of it. And I only went one time, on Zoom because it was a nice thing to meet everybody, but I could kind of see what the cycle was. And so I would say with almost all those groups, you know what it is too, is it's like, man, so I have an addictive personality, right? So like I went to Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever, when I was a teenager. And like, I've learned to embrace the benefits of being an addictive type person, of being someone who's extreme. That's why I got into boxing. Anyone that gets into a combat sport is extreme or crazy in some way, whether it's good crazy or bad crazy. And so to take those, so I found a lot of inspiration from other individuals who, are extreme addict type people, and how they use those as gifts. And so I think sometimes with those programs, specifically, James, like you're talking about, sometimes they try to kill the gift instead of transform the gift into something that's more useful.
Yeah. And I only ask that because I think that, we've talked on this podcast extensively, and I also think, Keith, that you mirror this in your content as well, that the story that you tell yourself is your reality. Yeah. So I think that there's, I'm curious how you've continued your journey with Lyme, and I don't know the damnedest thing about Lyme disease. So could you also educate us a little bit on after you receive treatment, is that something that then comes back up? Is it recurring? Is it autoimmune? Like, what can you give us some info there? Like, how do you stay focused there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's a lot of theories and conjecture. And to be clear, when I got a positive blood exam result for Lyme disease in early 2000s, it wasn't recognized to be in Georgia. So here I am having a positive blood result that says I have Lyme disease, but some doctors in Athens, Georgia would tell me I don't have Lyme disease, right? Because the CDC didn't recognize it at that time. They just hadn't caught up to it yet. But it took them to I think 2008 or so to finally catch up. Anyway, so there's a lot of debate. For this, my treating physician who specializes with Lyme disease, who initially did a lot of the groundwork stuff with HIV, Dr. Jomsek, he had to move states 3 times because of the newness of this illness in the South and how it just wasn't accepted, different ways to treat it. So simply the fact that he used long-term antibiotics to treat an illness, he had to move from South Carolina to North Carolina and finally find a home in DC where his practice is. And he was touted and, rewarded for his work with HIV, but then he jumps into Lyme. It's a different story. Now it's finally starting to shift, finally. But anyway, kind of offshoot there. It's something that there's a debate if it's turns into autoimmune or if there is such thing as chronic Lyme. No one really knows for sure. It can definitely lie dormant for a long period of time, I believe up to 2 years. And that's the scary thing about it. So keep that in mind for y'all. If you're in Georgia, you get bit by a tick and you don't have any symptoms or a bullseye rash, I didn't. 2 months later, a year later, you could get flu-like symptoms and be like, I just got the flu. But it's actually Lyme disease. So it can be dormant for up to 2 years. And that's what makes treating it difficult too. So for instance, with Jomsek, with his protocol, which he was one of the main doctors to do it, I think first, is pulsing. So you go on for a few weeks, go off for a few weeks, and you cycle on, cycle off. Because if you just hit it hard with antibiotics nonstop, it will hide out. It also builds up cysts and cell walls, or cysts to protect itself, and drills into cell walls. So that also makes it hard to kill as well.
Wow.
But how do I deal with that? How do I deal with that is throughout my journey, sorry, I had to kind of get myself on track, my mom will tell you she had to be my advocate for better or for worse, because I would lie a lot of times to tell myself a story. And so I would go see Jomsek. We'd go up to South Carolina, or when he was up in DC, go up in DC. And how's it going, Keith? Oh, I'm doing great. My mom's like, no, you're not doing great. Yeah, but really holding on to that identity, I think, is what allowed me to crawl out of that situation. It could have also been my downfall, by not giving my doctor enough feedback, perhaps. But it was at least important, I think, during those formative years. And it's something that, when I was, 16, 17, 18, 19, I wish I could work a job. I really wouldn't. I would train some boxing and recover and do a lot of treatment and stuff like that. And so, I wish that I, could fit into society like everyone else was of my peer group. But all that gave me a drive and a hunger to the point where I truthfully say, like, I am so, so grateful for having Lyme disease and so grateful for the years that it took from me, because it allowed me to put so much more into the years that I had following. And that's what's allowed me to sprint ahead of people who got a head start on me. There's people that started a business 10 years before I did, and I'm passing them. So, in terms of business or in terms of health.
There it
Talk
is.
that shit, Keith. Talk it. Oh, man, but it's like, that's to your point, though. And what James mentioned about you emphasizing that the narrative that we craft for ourselves is, because it's like a choose your own adventure, right? But when you choose your own adventure, one of those books, you can choose your own adventure, but you're still locked into what is written on those pages. And so depending on how it is that you continue to write the story, that really affects what could be a possibility. And obviously it's a fine line, like you said, if your doctor's like, how you doing, and sometimes you got to be strong. Sometimes, if you couldn't walk for 2 weeks, might be like, yeah, man, it was a tough couple of weeks, but okay.
Yeah.
And I just kudos to you.
But that's where it's like, if you're going to be on that balancing act, right? Wouldn't you all rather be on that side, right?
Yeah.
That side of, kind of not whining and complaining, of not over dramatizing what you're going through. That's the side you want to be on, right? It's much easier, I think, to slowly move yourself towards the middle versus take someone who is a complete, victim and try to get them empowered, right? They have to really want to get empowered in order for that to happen.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect example, because growing up, my mother, she dealt with a lot of different conditions. And I didn't really notice this particular thing that she did until sometime late high school, I think. But whenever I would get on the phone, I would, like most people do, how are you doing? Right? I would ask her that. And she would always just ask me, how are you doing? She wouldn't even answer the question. And I started to recognize that on the days where she answered me, she's feeling pretty good. And if she doesn't answer, then I know that maybe she's going through it a little bit, but she's not going to sit there and be like, oh, my back hurts, and oh, my head hurts. And she's just going, boom, we're going to go straight through it. How are you? And I just had to learn to respect, because it used to frustrate me. But then I had to learn to respect that this is a part of how she was able to deal with it all and not be a chronic victim, was you just kind of have to put certain mental trickery in place, to kind of trick yourself into the state that you want to be in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you get what you focus on, and, it's not like you can wish it away or will it away necessarily, but, if you focus on it a little bit less, or, occupy yourself with something else, it can shift that. So yeah, great point.
How has your journey with Lyme disease impacted the way that you coach? Impacted the way that
I
you
would
raise
say that
fighters?
it gives me more understanding for any struggle they've been through. Because one thing too, like I was talking to someone else about like a couple weeks ago or so, is when you're a leader, which is what you are as a coach, when you're a leader, people have to know that, you're real. You've been through something. You've dealt with something, and you've overcome something yourself. So outside of the fact of, me having some experience in boxing and knowledge, the fact of who I am and how I've pulled myself back from having a chronic illness where, I don't talk about this often, but we were actually, filing for disability for me there for a short time. So going through that lets people know that, well, if Keith can overcome that, I can, succeed as a boxer in this situation that I have. And also when he tells me something, it's something that it's not just he's telling it to me, it's something that maybe he's had to do in his life. And that's very important, because you can say all the right things and, do all the right little leadership hacks. But at the end of the day, you're just going to be a hack unless you actually have done it or something similar. So.
Makes a ton of sense. And when you mentioned earlier that people who usually engage in combat activities, combat sports, they're a little bit of crazy.
Yeah.
With the people you've worked with, right? And I imagine you don't maybe necessarily have to, and maybe this is wrong, but I imagine at this point you don't get to directly coach every single person who comes into Kepner Boxing.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah.
But if you had to just kind of throw a rough estimate out there, what would you say is the split between people who are good crazy and people who are working to become good crazy?
That's hard. I would say the majority of people, 75% are good crazy that come into it. It's only about 25% or less. And we also, the way that our brand is and everything else, and we really weed those people out really quickly. And if not, it's kind of one of those like sink or swim in a positive sense, meaning it's like you either get that right or you're not going to be right here. So like one guy I have in my mind, I won't say his name, but he would come in frustrated all the time. He would get so frustrated and everything else. And, just have all of those kind of toxic activities without being malicious, without being narcissistic, just all those kind of toxic self-talk and poisons people around him and everything else. And it's amazing to see how he is now. It's totally different. He walks different. He talks different. It's all different. And it's because of the community that he put himself in, that he knew he needed to be in. And I almost removed him from the community, not because of anything he did, but because of some of those toxic people around him actually reaching out to me and trying to cause some drama. And I had to, basically talk to him and say, hey, I had this person come to me, say that there's this situation that happened, not in the facility or anything, but just, out in personal life. What's the story on that? And, he shared it with me and it seemed to make sense. And, I gave him a chance and he proved that was a false story. But this is the problem, though, with combat sports, is that it brings people the majority of people who want self-improvement, who want to challenge themselves, who want to be a warrior for all the good things. And then it brings people that want to exploit people and people that are narcissistic and egotistical, that want to be the biggest and strongest and baddest gorilla. And and unfortunately, those people do a ton of damage.
So what sort of things do you have in place that you can share that helps you navigate that and just maintain that up and up feeling? Because to your point, especially people who've never gone in to do a combat sport, I imagine it can be, you don't want to scare these people out of the gym with one or two bad actors who are just trying to be the big gorilla. So how do you maintain that vibe?
Yeah, no, exactly. So, it starts off first when someone walks through that door and, smiling at them, saying hello, because, my wife had to call me out on this back when I started coaching, because, I came from this kind of hole in the wall boxing gym style and and where, somebody might try to challenge you, if you're a coach or whatever, and on any given day. And so people would, a male, like she said, a male would walk through the door and I would be mugging them, right? Be mugging them. And, but then, so she called me out on that. And then I also realized as well, it's like, hey, it's like, if we're going to be confident and everything else, you don't do that crap, right? If you're really confident, you're going to be friendly to people. You're going to be nice, going to be loving. And so we meet everyone with love when they come through the door. So automatically you see people come through the door all kind of, and then they're like, oh, you're nice. Okay, I guess I can relax. And so breaking that ice immediately. And then as well, when we spar in the facility, it's always, our coaches preach, take care of each other, take care of each other. You're not going to get better if you don't have a training partner. And that was a lot of times my problems when I boxed. I wouldn't have a lot of training partners because either I had people that I got better than, and I would literally be knocking out in sparring, or like you see the reels of Mike Tyson. I wasn't as good as that, but I'd be knocking out lesser people like that. And, or it would be only people that could beat the hell out of me. And so it's like, there's no kind of like middle ground for me to actually get better and get enough time in the ring, honestly, that isn't just always a fight. Because I mean, dude, it's like if every time is like you get in there, it's like your final exam, you're not really able to learn and improve.
That makes a lot of sense.
What do you think makes
I hope that answers your question?
For sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What do you think makes a great boxer? And what do you think makes a shitty boxer?
Oh,
outside of skills.
So both. Okay. Well, so what makes a great boxer is someone who is self-absorbed. If you're not self-absorbed, you're not going to be great at anything because you're going to be too focused on other people. And then secondly is the ability for someone to adjust, right? So to be steadfast in what their outcomes are, as you might have heard people say, and flexible in your approach, right? So that's something that, I learned from my father with his journey as a coach. And I've learned from coaching fighters, and I learned from my own experience with boxing, is when you're rigid in how you approach it and you have to succeed like this one specific path and way, you're not going to be successful. 20 times out of 21 times. So that, to me, that's what it is. And someone who's a crappy boxer is someone that is maybe someone that doesn't listen, again, so they can't be flexible in their approach. And also perhaps maybe they think they know everything and they don't realize that, hey, you're always learning something, And you can always learn something from everybody, even people worse than you.
What's been one of the most enlightening things you've learned from somebody you were coaching?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot. I'd say one of the biggest things that stands out to me is just some people's work ethic and their will to win. Because I've had the fortune of coaching a couple boxers that now have undefeated professional careers at this point, and seeing how they approach situations, how they approach challenges, and to also see them falter, to see that to be that close to somebody who is a winner and see where they do have their weaknesses and where they do doubt themselves and where they do get frustrated and it kind of breaks down a little bit. And to realize that no matter how great somebody is, they always are going to have those moments, but to see what the cumulative effect is of them, showing up more times than they don't. And 9 times out of 10. And so it's just, it's been great to see people's work ethic, people working night shift jobs and coming in and training before going to sleep and sleeping 4 hours a day, that type of thing, while competing in a high level sport. So that's really been the biggest lesson for me, is just, with what I do, how can I work harder? How can I be better?
How many people, or what would you say the percentage of boxers that make it, that are on that hero's journey, like we've seen in the Rocky movies, like we've seen in these fighting movies, MMA movies, where they are doing just that? They're working 1 or 2 jobs. They've got multiple kids. They've got a family. They're young, and they're literally putting it all on the line.
So what was your question?
What percentage of people do you think in the boxing world or combat sports in general are on that journey that make it to the highest of heights, versus the individuals that, are eating out of a silver spoon, that have mommy and daddy's money to pay down for 14 one-on-ones with Keith Kepner?
Yeah. Well, I would say, man, so it's like, it's 2 different universes, right? So it's a different set of skills. There's a reason why Logan Paul is known, and there's a reason why when he fights, he gets paid big money. And there's a reason why, I don't know, some other guy doesn't, right? And so it's a whole nother set of skills. It's an entertainment sport, and there's so many things that go into the business side of it with a successful athlete, specifically in boxing that I know of, that alone is largely the biggest determiner. All right. So even something like, I don't know if you guys saw the amazing fight that happened over last weekend with Lopez and Kambosos. Oh God. Okay. So you guys got to watch that. It's fight of the year. Insane. I won't tell you how we win or what happened, but oh my God. But even with that story, both those individuals, the individual that was the underdog who pulled out a tremendous victory, phenomenal. And he was like 10-1 underdog. It was insane. It's still the same thing. It's not like he's just some dude who's training in some gym. He had to get connected with the right people. He had to get connected with the right promoter. His promoter is Lou DiBella in New York, and Lou does a lot of good work, and he's a big time guy. And so you got to get connected with these people. And it's like with anything, and that's what I think the fallacy that people fall into. You guys familiar with the E-Myth?
Yes.
Okay. So you have the engineer type, right? Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So like that's what my father was, and that's what I thought I had to be as well. It's like, okay, if you just become so damn excellent at something, people won't help but notice, and you will succeed. And that's not the case. That's not the case, right? And we all know that, right? Because there's people that are worse than us that are more successful than us, right? And so same thing with boxers, man. There are boxers out there that are better than the boxers you see on national television or MMA or whatever. There are some that are better or as good, and you don't know who the hell they are, and no one knows who they are. And so you must master marketing and networking and be at the right proximity, right place, right time, all those things. Because I've seen so many fighters that were good fighters, but just not marketable, or they didn't have a marketable style. The same thing goes, I know for MMA, but definitely I know for boxing, is that, if you've got a boring as hell style, I'm sorry, it's going to be really hard to move you. If you're an amateur coming up there winning national titles, I've seen it, national titles, and you're a top boxer, best in the country, no one wants to sign you. if you're not exciting. So you're still winning. You're still winning, but you're not exciting. And so to me, that's one of the drawbacks of boxing. And that's why I like other endeavors more, like business, because if you succeed by the metric, there's one metric, which is, the profit and loss and growth of a business. And, everyone can know what the name of your business is or not. But if you're succeeding at that one metric, it doesn't matter. Right. I mean, you still have to market and everything else most of 99% of the time, but still it's like, there's not all of this, all those different politics and things like that going on.
Yeah. Cause if that net margin continues to grow, you are on the path.
That's right. And that's it, man. That's it. And so, and that's what the beauty of also, I think, having like a relatively free market is that you can go out there. Whereas like with boxing, with sports, it's not free typically. I mean, like, at least with boxing, I know maybe with other sports, like you climb up the ranks, but in boxing, climbing up the ranks is just a lot of politicking, most of the time.
I would say, I mean, what WBA and WBC, and even looking at UFC versus ONE FC versus Bellator, it's all politics. Ryan Bader is a hell of a mixed martial artist. He will never be in the UFC. He's a Bellator champ. They will never sign him.
And why is that?
He's too good, and he's Bellator's golden boy. They will never reward Bellator's golden boy because they are the UFC. It's very interesting to even see someone like Michael Chandler come over. And I have no idea what the politics look like in boxing, other than I don't understand all of the different individual belts all over the place and then unifications. And I liked watching the Wilder and Fury, that third one. That was solid. And I kind of want to pull on something. I want to roll back just a little bit. You mentioned Logan Paul. Yeah. What do you think about both the Paul brothers and what they're doing for boxing right now?
Well, I think anytime you have attention on something, it's great. So it's always a net benefit because if people aren't thinking about boxing or watching boxing, no matter how it's represented, then it's not on their mind. So as someone that loves boxing and has a business that's all built around boxing, it's great. It's great. And also like with the younger one, he takes the sport seriously, and, that's awesome. And because I know the game, not that like I'm the best player of the game, meaning like the business side or the fighting side, but because I know the game, I got a lot of respect for the younger brother because, he's doing it the smart way. And like, for instance, like, you remember, James, when I was training you, like Ronda Rousey, right? Ronda Rousey, hell of an athlete. She's an Olympian. She's a great competitor, but was she really the best MMA fighter in the world at her weight class, female? No, she wasn't.
She was just stealing elbows and stealing labrums. Yeah. That's all.
And we saw that. And, she was matched, well, and not that she didn't ever have to rise to the occasion. She did a couple times, but just, and again, like Olympic judo, like she would, like she could beat probably anyone in the world. And I guess she had to do that basically. But with the MMA, which is a different animal, she was not the best in the world. She was top, definitely like top 5, whatever. But, and so that's with like, same thing with all this stuff. It's like, it's an illusion, man. It's an illusion that, oh man, this person's best in the world. Are they really the best in the world? Not really. Not really. And same thing goes with the Olympics, by the way. So to be clear, I don't want to give props to the Olympics in the wrong way too, because, very few organizations have had so much corruption and also been nailed with so much corruption with boxing, with everything else than the Olympics. It's the same thing.
We definitely have our thoughts on the Olympics. It's not quite the gold standard anymore.
Oh,
no, it's definitely not. And then similar to James, rolling it back just a little bit, when you mentioned the aspect of being able to business having those hard metrics that you can track and can't be disputed, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious what the path to franchising looked like, why you made that choice, and how, that evolution in your business and your personal life, just what that has been like for you. Because you haven't, all things considered, you haven't been in business that long.
Oh, no, of course.
For someone to go franchise. So that's
2013, man, is when we started. And so, and also, man, as well, Savon, it's like right now I could literally work very few hours a week and have, over 6-figure income. Okay. So barely work because I don't coach right now. I work with the Fires a little bit here and there, but I don't coach. And so, yeah. Anyway, the path to franchising is that we hit this point with the business when we had our daughter 4.5 years ago. My wife started stepping out of the business and systematizing her end. Then I started systematizing my end to step out of the business. So I don't have these golden handcuffs anymore because, my father was a clinical psychologist as well. He's a PhD in neuroscience. And he had a practice that was nationally renowned for treating anorexia. People would fly into Athens, into that little airport, to see him across the country. And, but it was golden handcuffs. He would leave for a vacation for 2 weeks and the business would be cut in half. All right. And then he had to retire in 1994 because there's just too much, right? He's on call all the time for clients that are suicidal and things like that. And then that's when he got into boxing full time. Anyway, so I grew up with that mindset of like, okay, that's owning a business, is golden handcuffs and, owning a job. And, but then we start to grow the business, start to discover, okay, it can be different. And I met this guy in San Francisco, who's a Facebook marketing guy at the time for gyms. And he started changing my mindset on that. And he honestly painted the picture for me of what my life would be like 5 years from then. And it's the truth. And so we started stepping out, building the systems. And then about 2019, we were largely out of the business and it was running by itself and continuing to grow. And that's how we knew we had something that was replicatable. And so then we started looking at either expansion with corporate locations or with franchising. At that time, I had been helping some other business owners in the fitness industry help, and maximize their business. And I have a passion for that and a passion for business and coaching. And so I was like, how can I put all this stuff together? Because whenever I get sidetracked, like Savon, those fights that you announced that you did a great job at, right? Like when, man, that was the first one, right? That you announced, right? Yeah. Yes. And so, man, let me tell you, when that happened, I got sidetracked by that crap for a little bit. I'm like, oh man, promotions. Because we made a pretty good margin on that. I was like, oh man, I need to go do that. That's how I'm going to grow. And I got sidetracked and hurt the business a little bit. So I realized, how do I wrap everything that is Kettner Boxing, the one thing in my life business-wise that succeeded, into something that is also successful? And that's where franchising makes sense. And it brings all my passions together and everything else. And so basically we hooked up with Franchise Marketing Systems, which is a group in Alpharetta. And for a very nominal fee, they built out our FDDs, helped us build out our training manuals and everything else. And off to the races August 2020. So we started that process January or February of 2020. Pandemic hit. We stayed the course, used the pandemic as an opportunity to cut off the fat and the things that weren't the best things with the business. And and boom.
Man. So how long would you say it took for you to, or what point in the business, that decision of, okay, I think I want to get rid of these golden handcuffs? How long ago you said it was when your daughter was born, roughly, that you started thinking more about that?
A little bit after that. Because also too, man, it's like one of those things, like your ego gets in the way, right? Because everyone's telling you, like when James trained with me, like everyone's telling you, oh man, dude, this place is so great. And it's so great because of you, and it's like, oh, you're such a great coach. And I mean, dude, for a while there, man, I got
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, I mean,
you were a hell of a coach. You were the reason that I came. No one else.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And so it's the truth, like you're saying. And so I honestly got depressed when I stepped out all the way. Like when I stepped out all the way out of teaching and coaching sessions, especially the big group sessions. I love that, all the energy with that. I got depressed, man. I had to, find other things to enjoy and, things like that. But anyway, but so stepping my ego aside, because it's like looking at your business like it's a child. And just like with a child, when they go to high school, you don't need to be up their butt all the time anymore, right? And like when they go off to college, don't be the parent that's like calling them every darn night, while they're trying to do what they're doing. As long as they're doing it right, man, you don't need to be doing that. And so that's the same thing with the business. And so letting the business go from being an infant to a child, to a teenager, to a young adult. And so, yeah, that's what that was. And then also just, I don't want to be at the end of my life and say like, man, I wish I could have, maybe franchise, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that. I see so many people that are like that. So many people, they think they want something, or maybe deep down in their soul, they want something, but they don't do the scary stuff to actually do it and take the risk of failing. And that's one thing that's beautiful, like with the lessons of boxing and combat sports that, my dad told me he learned from it, many things. And the one thing that I learned from it as well, it's like, how does this compare to getting the hell beat out of you or getting knocked out in front of people? That's humiliating as hell as well. If anything, that's worse than failing at business or failing at some of these things. So why not take the chance?
It's a thought.
Do you use your
That's
time?
What's beautiful is a perspective. What you say, James?
Yeah. Do you use your time in the ring and that negative visualization of getting knocked out? Do you start with that when you embark on a new journey? Because there's really nothing that could be worse than that in your own mind.
I have not much anymore. So that was a tool that I learned from my father that I utilized there for a little while. Now it's simply the idea of, if I don't wake up or have moments in my day where I'm scared and worried and concerned about, am I able to do this? I'm not living anywhere near my potential. And a beautiful musing that I'm sure you guys have probably heard before, it's not my thought, is, the idea that when you die, because it's like, dude, who knows what and who cares? But just this utility thought of, right? Because who cares, right? But when you die, let's just pretend this happens. You meet yourself, who's your actualized ideal, everything you could be, right? Health-wise, family-wise, business-wise, psychology-wise, everything. You want that person to be a lot like you, man. You want that person to be, man, Keith, you're just like me, instead of being like, dude, you're a total stranger, And so having that thought in my mind is something that helps inspire me, and has inspired me for quite a few years now, because I saw my father do his best to adopt Buddhism and everything else near the end of his life, because he didn't do everything he wanted to do. And, and this is a very accomplished guy. But he tried to, similar to the addiction point, with Narcotics Anonymous and things like that. It's like he tried to tame his dark side that, he just should have let it channel. And instead it ended up him being bitter in his last couple of years. He was very, very bitter. Actually, for the last decade of his life, he was pretty bitter, but then it got worse. And so I saw that, and I realized that I don't want that to be me. They're like, oh, I'm going to have success with this business, and I'm going to do it by coaching everything and everything else or whatever, and doing this one rigid way. And then I don't get what I actually wanted from it. And then I'm going to be bitter about it. I need to continue growing. I need to continue pushing myself and continue to do things that aren't comfortable, because no matter how tough we are, we all have these things that we repeatedly refuse to do. And I do too, but call yourself out, eventually, or hopefully someone calls you out for you, and you start to grow those things and change those things. So.
The point you make about your father and kind of trying to lessen the blow of the realization that, like, damn, I left something on the table. I think that's such a useful example in conjunction with the point you made about if you met your idealized version. I've never heard that. I've heard what ultimately is trying to get you to the same place, but that actual practice of, all right, you die, now you meet the perfect you. What's the delta between you and it?
That's right.
Man, when did you first kind of, was it recognizing your dad's bitterness kind of one of the first steps, or did you have this internal change of frame reference, and then were you able to kind of notice that your dad had become bitter? Which one of those kind of took place first in that dichotomy?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I would say I had my own bitterness, and I knew that well when I was sick all the time, right? So I knew exactly what that looked like, because I was nothing near my ideal. Right now, I run and do all this other stuff. And then, like, I couldn't run a mile, and I couldn't, barely lift anything because my wrists were all, messed up and everything, carpal tunnel from Lyme. And so I got the feeling of what bitterness felt like of not actualizing, or not being able to actualize. And so seeing that, and then, but with perspective, so I would say that I saw that he just, he disowned me. He and I parted ways, and I saw him just fall down this complete path of bitterness and hatred for everyone. And he taught me how to hate in a good way, like how to hate the things that you do need to hate. But then it took control of him, and he didn't channel that drive and that edge because, and this goes back to the leader thing of that, I don't know about y'all, but if I'm going to follow someone, I need them to have some type of edge that they control, right? Some type of dark side that they control. Because if you're just purely the nicest person ever and just this lamb, who wants to follow a lamb, except to be slaughtered, right? You want to follow someone who is capable of extreme and of evil, but chooses not to be, right? That's someone you want to follow. Just like a fighter too, right? A fighter can do horrible things to somebody else, but they choose not to. And so I saw it kind of engulf him because he didn't channel it into the right path. And so, to give detail to his situation, he wanted a world champion that he produced. But the problem is that he was steadfast on doing it one certain way, similar to the way that James talked about being this hardworking guy that just, scrapes up in Rocky's story and, goes against all the odds to beat somebody to get a shot. And then they get the shot and they make it. And I saw him lie to himself a lot. And this is part of why he and I got into it. And, we had to part ways. And is that, he would list this fighter, that fighter, this fighter, that fighter, and say, oh, look, they did it. They did it. I'm like, no, actually look deeper. Look at who they fought here. Here they had a bum. They fought here. He refused to invest the money into fighters to get them to where they need to be and to take the path that is the actual path that you can succeed with a fighter to get them to that level. So it's like someone that says, I want to succeed in business, but they're not going to spend money on marketing. And they're like, oh, well, I just need to do a better service and my business will grow. It's like, no, you need to effing market, but they won't spend the money on it. And so it's a similar situation with him, just not being open to those and being too rigid. And but then that drive and that edge and that dark side took him over. Yeah, took him over, and it was really a sad thing to see. And after he died in 2019, and so I miss him a lot, and he taught me everything: what not to do, what to do, and what not to do. But yeah, it helps with perspective on that. Seeing that and drive me, because I needed a reason to drive me, because one of the reasons that drove me was to show my father that, I'm capable, because, it's one thing is no matter how much he hated me in his later years, he's always said that Keith will succeed at something because he's driven, and he saw me pour myself into things. And so, I wanted to prove him right. And also, prove him wrong in that he thought the path I was taking was not the right path.
Both of us having lost our fathers, do you have any regrets?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one. Regrets in the sense of, obviously, we all wish we would have treated our fathers differently, I think. I did have the fortune of many times, even when he, disowned me and everything else, telling him that I apologize for what I did, and saying that truthfully, that I did things wrong. And it doesn't mean that I don't think he did things wrong as well, but I did things wrong. And so I had the fortune of being able to tell him that. And so I am at peace with that because I had that opportunity. And then really, like, the last ending of it, and that's where when he passed, it wasn't as dramatic as it might have been, because I'd started writing him letters, because I started thinking, okay, well, what was haunting me while he was with us alive was, have I done everything I can do? Because I have massive respect for him. And I, don't see eye to eye, just like you do with anyone, but I have massive respect. So it was haunting me. I felt like there was something left that I could do. And so the last thing I could think of to do was to start writing him letters. So I was writing him a letter like once a week. And then he wrote me a letter back finally saying, don't write me anymore. Everything that's been said between us has been said. And that was a moment where I was like, that's it. And it was like, it was a good thing in a way, because it was just like, okay, I did everything I can do, and now it's not in my hands.
Do you find that in the practice of writing those letters, you gain closure? And is that why you can sit before us today and say, I did everything? I did everything that I could to try to rectify.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, like you guys know, we can't change the past, but we can change what we do right now. So in those times, I was, like you said, doing everything. Did I do everything before that? No, but I was doing everything I could do in that moment, and it was not enough. And so therefore it's no longer in my hands. Yeah, no, absolutely.
How has that whole saga with your father informed how you are a father to your daughter?
One thing is definitely because he was an excellent father, always provided, always worked hard. And that's what also inspired me to have that role model of someone working so hard. But is to realize, because he got into it with my sister, and I thought it was my sister's problem, which, you know, everyone's flawed. Everyone has problems. But then when he got into it with me, it was like, okay, well, you know, this is a pattern. So realizing that no matter how my daughter feels, and honestly, no matter how my daughter treats me, to always have love for her. And, not that I'm going to let her walk all over me or, emotionally abuse me or anything like that. But I tell her that, I'm always going to be here for you. Not going to always, do what you want me to do for you and things like that. But I'm always going to be here for you. And I'm going to make that commitment, because I made that commitment by bringing her into this world. And that's something that, it taught me that I am not going to ever disown my daughter, even if I have to have distance with her, because I know that what it's like to have, or what it's like on the other end, to be a child that truly does love your father, but maybe sometimes not treat them the right way. But it doesn't change how they actually feel about you and the respect they have for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to pivot a little bit to parenting.
Yeah.
We have another man in our midst that will be bringing a baby into the world here soon.
Really?
Yeah, January.
Awesome. What's the date?
10th.
Okay, man. Our daughter was January 14th, man. That's awesome.
Oh, that's crazy.
Very cool.
And I kind of want to go into what does leadership look like in a nucleus that's together in today's time? How do you serve your wife and your child in a time where everyone is running circles around this is the way to be, or this is how the famous do it, or the rich do it, or what have you? What has been your anchor, or how have you led your family since the birth of your child?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I want to say, before answering that, though, the side that I was fortunate enough to have someone tell me before we had my daughter, and very grateful they did tell me this, because it would have probably been more challenging. But at least my own experience, not everyone has this experience. My own experience is when my daughter came into this world. It was, an awesome, amazing experience. It was also shocking, and it was also, without sounding overly dramatic, it was a little bit traumatic, because you have this new person, and they don't really need you. They just need mom. And there's this weird kind of, males have postpartum as well. And I definitely experienced that. Felt very weird and lost there for the first few months. And my daughter also was colicky, so she was just crying and screaming all the time. And finally we got it taken care of. But so it was so hard and so painful. But it was also a beautiful experience and very tender time, because sometimes tenderness can also be depressing. Tenderness can also be painful. But with balancing all that, is that it goes to the relationship, I think, that you have with the woman of your child, and that you have the similar values, and you have friendship, and you have trust. Trust above all those. So Lissa and I have trust for each other, no matter what. And because of that, no matter how bad I've messed up and how bad she's messed up, she'll tell you too. We've never violated trust with each other. And that allows us to get through any situation and work through any situation, because, if you can trust someone, that's the first step. And but if you lose that foundation, then it's all gone. So building off that foundation, having those similar values, having trust, and then also determining what your roles are, man. My wife knows that I'm the type of person that I'm in Florida right now that wants to be out there doing things and getting things done, and I will always take care of my family because she got nervous from time to time with different situations in the world, and one thing that gave her a lot of peace was when she finally realized, like, what I told her. It's like, hey, like, no matter what happens, no matter if like everything falls apart, I will still do something to take care of our family. So fulfilling, really honestly, those traditional roles, along with, I think, just the modern level of communication and respect. I would say that's the only thing that's missing from traditional roles, maybe, is just the concept of mutual respect for each other and expressing that too.
No, it makes a lot of sense because I think sometimes it can be, well, and thank you for communicating what you did, because we're doing a home birth. That's something that Haley, my partner, she was comfortable with, something that I supported as well, knowing it's definitely a different route. It's going to have its own unique challenges. But through that whole process, she's a licensed massage therapist, so she's very into just healing and just rejuvenation and just that whole, health, as am I in my different ways. But doing the research, coming across the whole aspect of like, look, Pops needs to understand you're kind of going to be useless for a while in a lot of ways. And how do you juggle kind of like an ego thing? You have this child, you think this child is just going to like you or love you or want to even be with you, and they may not for a while.
Right.
So how do you process that? How do you deal with that? But also know that in a lot of ways, I've tried to wrap my head around it, being, for me, trying, because in the past, I've been up and down with different events in my life, but trying to stay stable for her and for the baby. Just be real even keel. What do you need, like you said, and do what I can be empowered to do, and really keep lights on, keep food coming, try to handle anything that I can handle that she doesn't need to be handling, while making sure our child stays alive. And then figuring out, all right, what are we committing to? What are we agreeing to? And what our balance of what we're going to handle is going to be, so that the burden doesn't all fall on one person's shoulders, but recognizing certain burdens can only fall on her shoulders. So, maybe I should carry, try to make the trip up from the car with, in one trip, get all the grocery bags that I can, in that sort of metaphorical sense.
Well, you kind of touched on it, Savannah, man, the rock. You got to be the rock. That's what the masculine energy and the masculine responsibility is to be the rock that someone can lay on and be supported by, but also the rock that can be thrown at something that needs to be warded off, and so to be a rock. And that's what I think is the job of the masculine individual in the relationship, which is obviously, going to typically be the male, is, to be that rock, the even keel. It doesn't move. And for kids, from my understanding with kids, that's what they would require from a father. It's not a father that's always there for them, or always playing with them, or always this or always that. But it's a father that's stable and consistent. That's what they want, and that's what they need.
I dig it. We will do our goddamn damnedest.
Anyway, one thing too is, like, it's a good opportunity to practice those stoic virtues, right? I was listening to a lecture on stoicism when I drive down here that I listened to a couple of years ago originally. And man, it's like, live to the greatest virtue. So, and that's what kept me going through those times with my daughter not needing me or really even wanting me, is just, what's the highest virtue that I can live up to? And the highest virtue in my mind, I know in your mind as well, is, being a father. And then second to that is, being a good partner to your spouse and mother your child. And that's it. Those are the highest virtues, and everything else behind that can support that, but is second or third to that.
Yeah. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And I've even noticed, I think it's a beautiful thing from God to give people that period of several months to kind of begin to prepare on the front end. All right, there's going to be this very, very extreme change in your life, here's almost a year to wrap your head around it, before it hits. But even recognizing with some of my business tendencies, and James and I, in our private group, we've had discussions about this fallacy that a lot of business owners have that, I work so hard because I'm always working. When it's like, oh, you might be hella inefficient.
Yes.
And me having to recognize my lack of efficiency in a lot of categories and try to start to cut that at the knees, as much as possible, because it's one thing without a child to work, X amount of hours in the day. But recognizing the shit that's coming up, me trying to be better and finding myself in moments where, all right, maybe I was planning on doing X, Y, or Z, but if it absolutely can wait, and I see that, I haven't really given much attention to my partner today, or she needs to communicate something to me, being better at recognizing that as quickly as possible and providing that time, because it's the depth of the time and the presence that outweighs the amount of time. And just trying to keep those sort of things in mind.
Yeah, the quality versus the quantity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and having it's got to be like real, actual personal quality time versus just a bunch of time. Yeah, great point. Yeah, with business and with relationships. And one thing too, I'm sure that you found this as well. But this is, my story is that, my wife. There's a reason why. Before I met Lissa in 2011, it was actually about exactly 10 years ago. It was December 2011. Everything that I do would not be possible. And so, and there's a reason why when I met her, I fell in love with her and it scared her off and she broke up with me. And then I pursued her for a year and a half to get back with her. And because I knew that was the person that I could trust, but that also had all the attributes that I needed to add to my life that I didn't have. And so, it was an emotional decision, but it was a strategic decision as well. I saw someone that I felt like I could help her and I felt like she could help me. And I also had the chemical experience of love, and lust for her. But, having that partner in your life and having that family in your life, your child as well, or children, forming them and molding them in such a way that is a benefit to them, but also benefit to you, and so building that whole base is just so essential and so essential to the success, to talk about men as a man.
Yeah, I've definitely found that in the past of, kind of finding the right feminine energy to smooth out some of the edges that you just can't quite seem to get to yourself, and being able to get that from them so that you don't have to then try to carry those qualities necessarily yourself in sacrifice to your more masculine traits.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And there's a reason why we all have inclinations, right? We all have inclinations and, use your gifts and your inclinations and use them for good. And, and again, like going on that dark side thing, it's like, the inclination for males for violence, 80% of violent crime is committed by males. But that's actually a virtuous trait, just used in a non-virtuous way, right?
Mm-hmm. No, most definitely.
I feel like James has something to say.
No, I think that what you're just saying there can be mirrored by a lot of the way Jordan Peterson speaks, talking about the propensity for violence, being a warrior in the garden instead of a gardener in the war. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have the propensity for violence, you're not meek, you're weak. Because if you can't even take somebody's head off, if you had to, then there's nothing courageous about what you're doing. You're just weak. That's it.
Right. Yo, on the meek thing, right? So, so Savon mentioned God. So let's talk about God. If you don't mind, Savon, let me ask you. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, dude. I'm so sorry.
Savon, you're good.
Savon. Savon. I kid you not, when I order food on the phone, people think my name is Steve. I don't know why. I try to say Keith. Maybe I make that too hard and they think Steve. Anyway, so Savon, what religious, do you have a religious group you'd identify yourself with?
I grew up Christian. I grew up super Christian. Almost every grandfather on my maternal side has been a pastor. Many on my paternal side.
That's myself where comes from.
Yeah, very, very likely. I myself, I just identify with God and the highest of the high. The Creator, and you can see that in many forms in life. And religions often tap into it, but there's often a lot of stuff in it that kind of dilutes it to some degree or distracts from that all high, in my opinion.
Of course.
So I don't practice organized religion.
Got you. So so non-organized. Okay, cool. So awesome. But like we all know lessons from, your history of Christianity, right? Because I'm not Christian either. But the line about the meek will inherit the earth, right? You've heard that one? Everyone has, right? James, have you heard that one?
Terrible translation to English, but yes.
Right? Oh, so you say what meek means.
No. Go right ahead. I think I'm following where you're going, and I want you to present this. You got it.
Got you. Well, yeah. So from my understanding, I don't speak, I don't know, what was the original written name?
Hebrew and Greek.
Yeah, Hebrew and Greek. Yeah. My wife's actually learning Hebrew. She's Jewish. So
oh, wow.
That's cool. But is disciplined, right? The original word, I believe, I couldn't quote what the word is at this moment, is discipline. And that makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Not the meek will inherit the earth, which is synonymous with weak, but the discipline will inherit the earth, because isn't that what we see out in God's world, or, even just natural selection, right? Mm-hmm. The discipline is what's going to succeed, especially in our modern era, because we've built a society has grown out of the human condition that rewards people who will do things for the long haul and focus on the long game versus the short game. The short game worked a million years ago, doesn't work now. And also it could also kill you a million years ago too. So.
No. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you make that delineation to discipline, because I just for a long time, I also was raised extremely Southern Baptist. Wow. My dad was a deacon. Now my mom's side of the family is all Catholic, and like tradition and rosemaries and, throwing rubber fetuses at abortion clinics. Like it's a little too much. It's actually a lot too much for me, but
activists.
The meek, I mean, that phrase, that's something, my dad was being a deacon in the church, would always crack the Bible open, sometimes crack my head open with the Bible. And so it was very interesting when I came across Jordan Peterson, and he made a big argument for meek not being what we understand it as being weak, and it being actually the individuals that are the warriors in the garden, because there's nothing courageous about not being able to get out a wet paper towel. You know? So I think that's important. I think that we've also lost a lot of, there's definitely archetypal application from the Torah, the Quran, the Bible. Take, any of the self-help books or any even fiction. Harry Potter, what have you. But I think that we've definitely dulled ourselves and maybe almost intentionally from the powers that be on the translations. The intentional miscommunication by altering the meaning of words as we translate from one language to the other.
Sure. No, absolutely. And, by the way, so y'all shared your history. So I had the fortune of being raised by an atheist and an agnostic. Oh, so a different
what was that
world.
Like?
Yeah, it was cool. It was awesome. And so I was out there not throwing rubber fetuses at abortion clinics. I was out there at 16 years old trying to debate street preachers, right?
Like the ones in Athens that are on the microphone.
Yep. I would be down there doing that and doing a horrible job because I was too emotional about it. But so it's really interesting growing up with that. But then I would say, though, even though my father was an atheist, he was not really a militant atheist, which I think is it's an important distinction. And he saw the utility with religion, and I see the utility with religion. How I identify myself is really a utilitarian, is that I don't, and like we all know, whether it's like your genetic propensity or how you're raised or whatever, who knows, but I find value at times in believing in a higher power, and sometimes I don't. And I know that sounds flippant, but I find that whatever allows me to exercise my greatest good. So for instance, if belief in a higher power means that, like touching on your point, James, if I believe I'm suffering because God hates me, or I believe that, there's someone that's going to whip me for eternal life in hell because I'm not doing something I should be doing, I'm not going to believe that. But if I need to call upon that in a dark time where I may do something that's not going to be in alignment with my true purpose and values, I might call upon that concept to help get me through that, and to lend me some type of power or source or influence or inspiration. So yeah, I think people throw out the baby with the bathwater too much with religion, because it's easy to point at anything and point out all the flaws. It's like, man, for instance, like, getting into franchising. I've been doing a lot more reading about Ray Kroc, and actually someone that knew, someone whose father knew him really well, reached out to me on LinkedIn and talked to me about him and said, like, yeah, like what you're reading is right. In a few places I'm reading different stories about him of like, he really did care. He was actually a person that really cared and was a good person and did actually want people to succeed with business and grow and everything else. And actually, did all these things to ensure that. So it's really easy when someone has any level of notoriety or success to just poke holes. And there's no reward or talent in that. Anyone can do that and point out the blemishes, doesn't make it special.
Great point.
Yeah, I almost also think that, when people come along, and I mean, maybe we can agree that Muhammad was a good person if he was an actual good person, and that Jesus Christ was a good person at very least. These individuals that are prophetic, but I wonder what the downfall is of having individuals that we can point to in the human experience that are prophetic, that are the bringer of good news. Like, do y'all think that is something that actually is to the detriment of religion, or to the detriment of archetypal application of religion to life, and then instead maybe throwing baby out with bathwater?
Makes it too easy of a target to tear down, what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just curious if it, like, having a prophet that has walked the earth and that stories are about, does that make it easier to just throw everything? Because I mean, I will in-text citate sometimes out of Mark or Matthew or Psalms or what have you. Yeah. There is some very interesting things that have gone on in the Bible, even if they're just parables, even if they're just metaphors. Cool.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can see the same thing in the Torah in some places and in the Quran, which I have all on the shelf. But it's interesting that, for example, being around family who, older sister works for Chick-fil-A corporate, younger sister's a Baptist collegiate ministry leader. They're both married, and my younger sister's about to get married and kids and until eternity or whatever. But if I open the Torah or the Quran around them, it's almost as if they want to run. It's almost as if they're like, whoa, can't do that. So, like, are we too close-minded as a population, or are we too open-minded to shit that doesn't matter, but close-minded to stuff that we could take value from?
I think the short answer, yes. In general, people are closed-minded, and I think that back in the day, we have to recognize what time we're actually in. And I think that if we take it back thousands of years, day-to-day life was so different. Yeah. So even having a religious or spiritual practice had a much different role. And I like what you said, Keith, about the utilitarian nature. I haven't heard that term in relationship to just spirituality or religion, but I would put myself in a similar camp. And I think that if people, to me, James, that the idea or the purpose of even putting prophets in the Bible, one is, hey, on paper, a lot of these people, I'm of the belief, could have actually walked the earth. But I think the thing that's important for people to keep in mind, this is at least how I try to pull at some of the things that are in these religious texts, is that there's supposed to be a demonstration that, hey, the ordinary man, woman can be extraordinary, given the right situations and context, and it won't be everybody who reaches these heights, just like not everybody is disciplined. So most people won't inherit the earth. But maybe read through some of this game, get some perspective on some of these stories and some of these things these people have been through, and take from it what serves you.
Yeah. Well, and I think, touching on your point, James, it can all be used for good and for bad, right? Just like any situation in our life, God forbid the loss of a loved one, what's it going to do? What are you going to do with it, right? You know, is it going to be the reason you're going to be a drug addict? Is it the reason you're going to go shoot a place up, or is it the reason why you're going to go save lives? You know, someone that I got to know lost her husband from post-concussive syndrome. He was a fighter at about 30 fights, and he got hit in sparring by a bigger person. And for the next 2 weeks, he started to act out. And he was like aggressive and explosive and things like that, not acting like himself. And then it culminated one Sunday night. They get in an argument. He goes in the garage and he shoots himself. And they have a 2-year-old child at the time. And so I had the fortune of getting to know this woman during this time and her journey from this. And she used it to be a ringside physician, you know, to get into that, because she's a pediatrician. And so she's used it as a reason to serve and as a greater purpose. And that's what got her out of that situation. And again, just like with her, touching on her point earlier, she tried to jump with be with the widow groups and things like that. And she's like, man, you know, these women lost their husband 10 years ago and they're still mourning the husband like it was yesterday and acting like he was God or like he was Jesus or Muhammad, you know? So, you know, her life is good now, and her daughter's life is good. And it's because she had an empowering philosophy coming from that. And yeah, and like you're saying, James, all these things are twisted and used as methods of control. And the easiest thing to do with it, and we all do this, the easiest thing to do is the heuristical thing to do, which is to just paint it a color, you know, paint it blue and say it's blue, where really it's a whole lot of different shades of a whole bunch of things. And something like the Bible, the New Testament, borrows so much from the great philosophers and so many things that, you know, so who knows, you know, and who cares if it is the inspired word of God or not. The point is that all those teachings are largely universal, and even some of the more archaic, this sounds insulting, but some of the more archaic teachings in the Old Testament, you know, some of those as well. It's a little bit more edgy, a little bit darker, but some of those are important teachings as well. And then also you got to look at the context of their time, right? So, and that's one thing too, honestly, like just to be really open, that I think is unfortunate about our modern era is we judge too many people and too many schools of thought based on our modern perspectives and not upon the perspectives that were around at that time, right? And the era in which they lived, right? So instead of learning what we can from individuals from, you know, 100, 500, 1,000 years ago, we judge them. You know, and it's easy to be Monday morning quarterback and say, oh, you should have done this and this, and, you know, da. But it's like, hey, man, you need to acknowledge the good and acknowledge what they did and what you can learn from it. Because if you don't, you erased all of history and you have nothing. And now you're back to square one, where we are climbing down from the goddamn trees. So
there it is. There it is. Yeah, I like that philosophy, Keith. I do.
Right, that's the thing too, man. It's like, you know, I'm pretty a-religious, but, you know, dude, I value all of the religions. I value them so much because I know what good they can do. I used to always, with those street preachers, tell about all the people that were killed by religion and tortured by religion and everything else. But what about all the people that were saved? Mm-hmm. You know, there were so many people that were saved, so many people that were inspired and breathed life into them. And man, why not preserve that? Why not build that up? Why do you got to tear down the whole goddamn thing because of that? No. Keep it, build it, just make it better.
Be flexible in the approach.
Right. And that's one thing that's beautiful, isn't it? Though, too, is that a lot of times the most judging people are the people that preach non-judgment, right?
Yes.
You know, and that's one thing actually that I love in my course with, you know, like with growing Kempner Boxing and like we're doing now, because now it's like on another level with franchisees, where it's like I'm not just talking to a whole bunch of people that are like upper middle class, you know, from this background, Like, believe it or not, I'm talking to a lot of immigrants, a lot of people from different places in the world, a lot of people from different backgrounds, and it's so beautiful to have something like business and like franchising that unites so many different people from India, from different parts of America, from the Philippines, et cetera, et cetera. man, we got to find these uniting factors. It's like, when I was coaching all the time at our location in Athens with Kepner Boxing, I was so proud that, and people still tell us this all the time, I have people that are on the left side of the political spectrum and people that are on the right side of the political spectrum both say in confidence that they feel welcomed and that they feel accepted and that they feel like this is a safe place for them. Because too often when people say it's a safe place, there's actually something else behind that. And there's some type of authoritarian attempt at creating a safe place versus just actually being a place that accepts people and acknowledges the different and acknowledges really the similarities and what the greatest purpose is with our lives, which I think is self-actualization, right? And and I think everyone can agree on that. No matter what side of the spectrum you're on, how can you self-actualize? Whether it's being a someone that does charitable works or what have you, or someone that grows a business. And also, by the way, too, if you don't grow a business, you're selfish because you're not helping your clients, but you're also not growing a team of people that could be supported off your business. It's like right now we have 10 people at our location here in Athens that, or here I'm in Florida, in Athens. And, we could have done that if I wanted to grow in the business. If I just would have kept it me, it would have just been me and my wife. And, we could be greedy and everything else. But yeah, so it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, people get wrapped up too much and they forget what the purpose is, right? Which is, we're all human beings here. One thing actually, just to go crazy here. You guys ready for crazy?
Let's do it.
Give it crazy real quick. So dogs. Okay, dogs, right? Dogs. I used to be a dog person, all right? And it's not that I hate dogs, so don't hate me. But it's not that I hate dogs, but I am no longer a dog person. And what I am is I'm actually a people person, right? I like people more than I like dogs. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I've met some people who like dogs more than like people. You guys met people like that?
Absolutely. Always confused.
And, it just, I don't know, that somehow just like really rubbed with me the wrong way. And, man, you like this dog. Well, all the reasons why you like this dog are actually really, really negative reasons if you really think about it deep. Right? Yeah. They're passive. They don't have their own opinions. They don't offer you really any value besides just something to hug on. And it's like your own little pet slave, right? And again, like we have 2 dogs. Okay, we have 2 dogs. Like, okay, and it's a value for my little girl. But, dude, like, you gotta be in love with people, man. People are what's going to save your life. The dog, man, in very few situations is going to save your life. Yeah, it offers some protection, but outside of that, I love people a lot more than I love dogs. And that's a big shift in my life is that I used to be a dog person. I used to be more antisocial being a dog person. I used to be kind of one of those people like, oh, I like dogs more than people type attitude a little bit. People suck. I used to say that a lot. I don't say that. And I think that's part of the shift. So just go totally left field on you there.
Are you speaking to individuals? Maybe there may be a necessity to be around more givers and be a giver yourself instead of a taker and instead of a matcher, because dogs give. They don't do anything but give. They don't take anything from you. They just give and they 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 see you. You leave for 5 minutes. They come back. They give in more. Are you speaking to the psychology of where most people are at, where they'd prefer to take instead of give?
Yes. I believe you synthesized it, James. Yes, absolutely. Because my life is in service to other people, even though I'm serving myself in the process, being a coach, being a franchisor, everything. I'm down in freaking Florida right now. I drove 7 hours last night to get down here to help. And yeah, that's my problem is I don't like people that don't want to give themselves to either an endeavor or to somebody else. People are selfish, man, selfish. But what's important to remember is like people twist selfishness, right? And it's like that whole thing. It's like, you guys know this one. I know you know this one, Savon, about Savon, like when you lose pressure in the cabin, right? And the air mask drops down, right? Who do you put it on first, Savon? Who do you put it on?
Me, myself, and I.
You selfish asshole. You're an asshole. How dare you? You should put it on your newborn child. No, you put it on yourself first so you can do that for them, right? And the only reason I'm in a position to help other people is because I've helped myself, and I continue to help myself. And anyone that knows me knows that that's not just me saying, oh, I help myself and I think I help other people. I help myself, and that's why I'm in a position to be a rock for my wife and for my daughter, and a rock for my people that I work with, where they know Keith is stable. Keith's on point. Keith might F up, but he's going to get it right back after that, and be consistent. Actually, that's what background on my phone right now is, just simply reminding me of how this consistency. Nothing else matters. Actually, you guys want to know Ray Kroc's favorite quote that he gifted to this person's father that the daughter shared with me the other day? Can I read that to y'all? I'll read that to y'all. It's beautiful, guys. I never heard this one. Because, you guys know all the quotes, just like I do. I know all the quotes. But here, so press on. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education alone will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. That was Ray Kroc's favorite saying. And it's true, man. We all know smart people that don't do crap. They don't give anything. They don't create anything. They don't build anything. And they don't do anything great in this world. And I think if you have a brain that you can use, you are neglecting your duty and your obligation as a human being to do something good. And I honestly, it's like, that which you do not hate, you will eventually tolerate, as Malcolm X says, right? And I hate a lot of things, but I also love more things that I hate. And the things that I hate inspire me to do good.
Man, this shit was like a TED Talk, Keith.
Yeah, you got to do more public speaking, sir.
Well, Facts. I mean, so at these expos that we do, franchising expos, I do public speaking too. So like we'll be up in New York. I'll be doing a presentation there at the expo that we have, and did one in Atlanta, and it was a cool little perk because we do these franchise expo shows all around. So now I get the opportunity. So now the one I do is on leadership, and it went over pretty well. It's cool though because I get all preacher, Savon. I get all preacher on them, and people come in, man. It was cool. So like the one in Atlanta, I started off. It was like 3 people sitting there. When I finished, there was 20 people sitting there. That was cool.
Real-time feedback. Yeah, man. And it's funny, even just your energy, I recognize the enhancement of your energy from the time that I first met you to now. And it's just cool because we never had that much time to actually just chop it up. I was checking people in on a damn iPad to your class. And then our interactions were still very brief for the fight. But no, man, this has been a tremendous gift. And I could just feel it coming off of you, man. Just the authenticity, the genuineness about just the
well, and similar to like what you're saying, Savon, because you seem like a different man as well. And I know you are. I hope you are. I hope you're not the same dude you were back then, right? And same with you, James. But it's like you guys are real. And that's a cliche. It sounds so stupid. But like you gotta be honest and legitimate, man. And there's a reason why people not as many people as I'd like so far, because I just haven't got the word out enough yet. But there's a reason why someone's willing to give me thousands of dollars for a franchise. And like I've had people do that over other people because they just were not sincere, and sincerity is the most important thing. And if you're sincere and you come off like an asshole, is because you're an asshole and you got to fix that. Right. And, if you're sincere and you come off like, like an egotist, you're an egotist. You got to fix that. And so that's my opinion, is that, I'm confident in that the work I've done with myself, not that I don't have so many things that are so horrible about me still, and ways that I mistreat people, and those closest to me from time to time. But I can be honest with it because I'm always working on it. I'm always owning it. And the second I stop owning it, it's going to grow and get worse. And, I can't let that happen.
Yeah. I think you're speaking to something that we also like to hammer home every podcast, that, the abdication of personal responsibility kills the man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and also as well, it's like going back to the dog thing. Like a dog's not responsible. That's why it's on a leash, or it should be on a leash. You don't walk your dog with a leash. You'd wear a leash on your dog. That irritates me. But because again, it's a thing of like, you're responsible for your dog. But yeah, like you said, if you're a man or a woman that doesn't have, that abdicates your personal responsibility, you are choosing to be a domesticated animal that belongs as a pet for somebody. And that's
the state.
And what's that? Clipping.
Yeah, the state. Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And, like, look at our educational system, right? The educational system, this is kind of a cliche too. It's like every time I go into this, I feel like I'm giving a cliche. But here's one that you might not have thought of, is that when you go through school, because again, to be clear, man, I have very little schooling. I went to Montessori school, which is not a benefit for me because I'm very self-directed and motivated. So I just got good at art, and I literally didn't even learn how to multiply it. Okay. And then, so I went to St. Joseph's for 2 years, Catholic school, to catch me up for high school. And then I went to high school and I attended literally a semester of high school before I dropped out. So I have no schooling. And so everything I've learned is self-education and the society and having my parents and everything else. But think about it. When you're in school, you're taught that all your value and your work is determined by who?
The teacher.
That's right. Not you, not determined by you. You don't have a judgment on it. It's by somebody else. I'm like, so what the hell does that teach you going into life, into the world? Is like, you're always looking for how what you're doing is judged by other people and how do they rate it? What do they think? And that just programs you for a horrible life. I think a horrible life, because even if you are in a position where you're an entrepreneur or you're working in a business or part of an institution, you need to have that self-value and that self-judgment ability. And so, there's a lot of things that are so wrong with it. And that's where we're debating, honestly, what to do with my daughter, because of a few different things with the schooling systems and how we can give her an empowering start. That's a big challenge as a parent.
Yeah, I've thought about it. We've talked about it some. I'm like, it's a blessing. We don't got to make this choice for many years.
Yep. Get a lot of time to think about it. It's still hard when it comes time to think about it, though.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
I'll tell you, man, that's why I want to grow this darn franchise, because I want to take my daughter around the country and maybe around the world. And to me, that's the best education. Also, too, one more throw at the modern educational system is think about this as well. I think this was a benefit for me to not have this, is when you spend your life in school, right, going up all the way into college and spend your early 20s in school, you're around people that are your age, right? That is so uncommon throughout the history of humanity. And it's so negative, I think, and detrimental to an individual and their development. And that's where I think it was of great benefit for me to be around my, at the time, 65-year-old father all the time, and he be my best friend when I'm 17 years old, because I get a better perspective. And sure, I developed some old tendencies that I had to snap out of, but still, man, you spend all this time around a bunch of idiots that are, your age. Who the hell is going to teach you what to do? And then conversely with that, you don't spend time with anyone younger than you. So you don't ever learn how to lead or break things down or have understanding for somebody. And it's a real shame. And I think it's of real importance that we incentivize mentorship programs and things like that. And that's what I do, man. I don't need an institution to tell me to do it or formulate it for me. It just naturally happens, where I have a lot of people that I talk to that are, younger than me and some that are older than me that either mentor me or I mentor them.
Yeah. Years ago when I was selling knives for a company, and my manager at the time, I basically got into this training program. And one thing in that he taught me or taught us was that to continue to progress in life, right? To that image you showed us about consistency, to be able to keep adding more from that kind of power of that centrifugal force.
Yeah.
You need to be able to teach people that are underneath your level, have peers to get perspective from and kind of feel a closeness, camaraderie, and then people above you to learn from. And to your point, being in school your whole life, robs you of that. It places the people that you do learn from, your teachers, on this pedestal in a deity-like fashion where you can't question what they say. They solely determine your success or not. And then you're in this mindset where you think you're above the people who happen to be a few grades behind you. And
That's
on top of that, it puts you in this framework where you think that life is a yes or no question or an essay. And everything you do through life, all of your challenges are timelines and literally yes or no questions for the most part. And life, like you said, is not one coat of paint. It is many, many, many different hues and pigments and shades. And I've noticed it in people when they get out, especially ones who go to college and then they go to grad school and then they want to keep chasing this next piece of paper, which is really what you're giving them paper to get another piece of paper back. And they get out and it's like, fuck, this life shit is, damn, this is a lot more complex than than that essay I had to turn in.
That's right. That's right. And and also, man, too, it's like, so my mom has a degree. I can't remember what it's in. I think it's in art, but my father has a PhD in neuroscience. But he told my sister and I, don't go to college. Don't go to college unless you have something that you need to go to college for. And that's what we're telling our daughter too. And so my sister's a CPA for the CDC. And so it's like, she went to college because she didn't have anything else she wanted to do. So she got a job that paid her good money and something, that's okay. And she has a great quality of life. With me, it was no college at all. And that's totally fine. And it's funny, like, you guys know Peter Thiel, right? You know who that is?
Yeah.
So you hear him talk about college and what it is. Yeah. And how we need to define what it is, right? So we need to define what education is, what college is. It's not the modern day Catholic Church where you have your deacons and everything else, and you're trying to ascend through it. And, I remember, like, James, when I met you, man, at that time, I was just kind of getting over the fact that I hadn't gone to college and everything else. And I felt lesser than all those college kids in some ways, and put them on a pedestal because, they had achieved this, this sainthood or this position in this, in this system. And, but then as I continued to grow myself, I realized, wow, that doesn't mean anything. And now people like that work for us. So. And then you also see the folly of their ways, right? And again, some people obviously gone on to be successful, but you see the individuals that they didn't learn the necessary skills along the way, and that's the thing too. Is I feel horrible for generation upon generation of humans that think that that's their savior is education, and it's not, man. It's like with that quote, like, education is not going to do anything for you, all it can do is just give you perspective. But if you do nothing with that, it doesn't matter. And also, it doesn't give you good perspective most of the time anyway, especially the way it does now. So,
yeah.
Better start by saving yourself.
Yeah, no, exactly. And also, man, like, teach by your actions, right?
Yes.
Because that's the thing too, is that, man, how many people can talk a good game, right? Everyone can talk a good game. Right. Even people that suck at talking can talk a good game. And then also, like, on the other side of talking a good game too, is like, think about the people that ask for advice or try something and they actually don't do it with sincerity of wanting to succeed. They do it so that they had a way that they can tell people they tried to do it and it didn't work. Right. So it's like, I experience this, unfortunately, sometimes where I tell them, okay, hey, you got to do this. And okay, I did that. And how'd it go? It didn't work. Okay, well, now what are you going to do? Well, I don't know. It doesn't work. So I'm going to be a failure. Is like really honestly what their conclusion is almost. And, so like, same thing with health, man. People are like, oh, I did this, I did that, I did this. And it's like, well, okay, we'll find the next thing you can do, don't give up. And it goes to what you're saying, Savon, is that, like, with education, it's like, oh, well, I checked this box and this box and this box. And, I didn't get accepted with my, my whatever. And, or I didn't get the classes I want. So it's over, game over. And it just teaches that. And that's where, I had a great benefit of not being in school and not being indoctrinated into being a cog in a system, because it's designed for that. I know some other, I think, by the way, I think the United States is the greatest country on earth. And in the history of earth, it's not perfect, but I think it's the greatest. But there's other countries, like, I think it's maybe Sweden or something like that, where in high school, they start doing like an internship for like a trade. And it doesn't mean that that's what they're destined for life, for servitude to be a plumber or whatever, but they're able to actually learn a skill. That's something that actually will transfer into a really good paying job if they choose to do so. And then it's, you know, it's a free place. So if they're like, okay, I don't want to be a plumber, I want to do this, they can do that. That's fine. They can go back to college, whatever, you know? And so we do not incentivize that enough. And it's to our detriment.
Yeah, I think that's part of the what I would identify. Some could call it a transition point, but the decline of the greatness of America is because it was built upon action. You know, sure, some people sitting around the corner thinking and writing up, you know, contracts and deeds and all that. That's where a lot of the finessing happened. But the country was built off of doing. And I always like to tell people the highest form of thought is action. And being in school, they just usually teach you to just stay so cerebral that you are removed from your actual body. And if you're not in your body, it's going to be very hard to do anything. And I've suffered with this at times too, because I went super extreme on academics in high school. And it wasn't until I got to college, I had to make a conscious choice to be like, you know what? Fuck school. I did all of this. I thought I was going to go Ivy League. Didn't get in. Man, fuck this shit at this point. Let me live life a little bit more and not place such a high priority, so much of my self-worth in these damn grades I'm getting, because ultimately life is not your damn GPA. And yeah.
You know what it is? It's solidified in one way that I love that James Clear said it. Great book, Atomic Habits. If you guys have read it, you get Savon, you're nodding.
I've heard of it, have not read it.
Great. James?
It's one of those books that I think is mental masturbation and what I'm doing day in, day out. So, but yes, I know I have it and it's on my shelf, like 2 feet away.
On that note, well, see, this is exactly on the mental jerk off note that you just said is, you know, so he states it there, and it's, you know, it's not his thought. He probably took it from somebody, but is movement and achievement, right? And so, like, similar to what you're saying, the masturbation thing, I've been stuck there, and I'm getting better about not being stuck there, like way better. And that's why I'm doing big boy business instead of little boy business. I told my wife that too. She's like, yeah, that's like her thing too. That you get stuck in the movement thing, like you're saying, Savon. It's like, oh man, I read this book. You know, I read this thing. I had this, you know, I learned this new concept. Oh, it's so cool. What's this other cool thing I can learn? And that's a bunch of movement. You're moving, but you're not achieving anything. And so it's really because you get a dopamine hit from the movement, you know, because you're like, oh, I learned something new, you know, and you get all the good feelings and everything else. You feel like you're growing yourself, and you potentially are, but you aren't actually. One thing that my dad always said is that, you know, potential is the rule, right? It is the rule, and actualized potential is the exception. But yeah, so movement, don't mistake movement for achievement. That's something that I tell myself all the time, because I'll get caught in that trap over and over and over again. And what's important is I call it out on myself, where I'm like, oh, let me learn about this, learn about that. And it's like, okay, what the F am I going to do with it? Let me do something with this. And that's what actually has led me to read less books, because I, you know, went through a couple of years where I read like 25 books a year and things like that. And that was good. That was good. But, you know, I that's tacked back. And on the occasion that I'm like, oh, I'm not reading as many books as I used to, I'm like, oh, well, I'm doing more than I used to.
You're achieving more. Yeah.
Yeah. Way more.
I'm so glad you said that, because there was a period where it hit me too. A few years ago, maybe like sophomore year of college, I was kind of in this flow of like, oh, I'm doing so much growth by learning all this new stuff. And then it hit me. It was like, oh shit, I'm just addicted to self-help now. And that's a thing. And having to recognize like, no, cool. You know, it's something I say a lot, and it's kind of like a slogan for Native Assets, but like, knowledge applied is power. You know, too many people think that knowledge is power. No, it's not. It's potential, like you just said.
Exactly.
But you have to apply it.
And you're right. Yeah, knowledge isn't power. It's applied power, which you learned that from a self-help book. But what's important is you took that damn thought you got from a self-help book and you applied it, right?
Yeah.
And man, but that's one thing that's important to note, though, conversely, just to be opposite of what we're saying, because I am a debater by heart. I want to be a lawyer when I stopped boxing. I want to be a constitutional lawyer, actually. But it just, you know, I thought my dad thought you could still take the bar in a state and become a lawyer, which used to be the case. But then when I found out I had to go to law school, I was like, F that, right? Anywho, so just to give the converse point on that, though, is that don't wrap up all your time that should be involved with achievement with, movement, right? With all this crap if you're learning all this stuff that you're not truly going to apply or aren't ready to apply yet even. Now, though, on the other side of the coin is I will see people that they do some achievement, but then on their free time, they are not growing themselves and they're engaged in activities that maybe you could argue are not, or are doing the opposite, or decreasing themselves, but at least they're not moving the needle there and growing themselves. And then they stall out. So that's just the other side that's important to watch out for. Because, man, it's amazing as I talk to more and more people that are at higher levels than myself, but they're stalled out a little bit, right? They're kind of stuck at this one point. And I'll tell them about a concept or something that I learned about. And they're like, oh, wow, I never heard of that. And it's like, oh, well, shit, sounds like you got to maybe do a little bit more learning. So, yeah, that's just the other side of the coin. But again, like you said, the self-help thing is an addiction. And it's just like eating too much food, right? It's good for you, but you can eat way too much of it and be obese and die. And same thing with self-help. I know so many people, or I've met so many people and know of so many people that it's almost like a red flag if you're too much into self-help. You know what I mean? It's like if you are always saying the things and talking about these specifically certain things. It's like one way Jordan Belfort says it that I like. You guys know who that is, right? Of course you do. Of course you do.
Straight Line Selling. He's I know him from obviously the movie, but I've dove into a lot of his Straight Line Selling.
Yeah, no, we teach Straight Line. Okay, so James, you know what he says there, where he's like about The Secret, right? About the book The Secret. You heard him talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really cute. I love it, right? But he's like, yeah, if you light your candle and you're in your bedroom and you're believing the check will appear, the only thing that will appear in the mail is an eviction notice, and your wife will be sleeping with your neighbor. And that's the secret. You don't think an elephant's going to appear and it's going to appear. And too often people will fall in that trap. I'll tell you someone else just to be polarizing. You know who I don't like as well? Oh, no, I like Jordan Belfort. You know who I don't like, though, in the self-help world? Okay.
Let's hear it.
It's like freaking nails on chalkboard. Simon Sinek.
I'm not super familiar with that.
Interesting. Yeah. Why don't you like him?
Because
I feel a similar way about Lewis Howes.
I feel you on that. I would say that he doesn't seem to represent. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a big fan of his. I respect him for what he's done, his hustle. But I feel like he's more of just like, hey, I hang out with this person, and I talk to them. So, but where Simon
Sinek, the same
Sinek,
vibe I've gotten.
Yeah,
Simon Sinek is this dude. He's like, I have the knowledge, and his face and everything else. It's not just his face I don't like. I don't like his face either. I'm sure he's a great guy. He's a nice guy. But like many of these individuals, what was he like? He was just a writer. He was a writer. And then now he teaches leadership for corporations or whatever. And, whenever I see someone share his stuff, it's kind of on that line of like, it's toxic self-help. It's toxic self-help management of don't get me wrong. Like, oh, you should take care of your people and care about your people. They're more than just a number. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Duh. Okay. Sorry. I'm not a psychopath. I don't need you to tell me that. Right. And if you're trying to tell that to a psychopath, it doesn't matter. They won't hear you. Okay. It just makes maybe the employees feel better, perhaps. But I remember I was listening to something recently when I was like, let me just delve into his thing for a second, just to see how much I don't like him. And he was talking about millennials, it's not your fault, and I'm a millennial, man. I'm 34 years old. And he's like, it's not your fault. It's, it's you were put into this system, which isn't made for you to succeed. And, all this stuff like that. And I was just like, oh my God, this is toxic. This is so toxic.
That same thing that you're talking about is something I see from a lot of psychotherapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists nowadays that are like, hey, it's all childhood trauma. Every single thing that could possibly happen, you beat the shit out of your wife, childhood trauma. Nope.
Right.
It's your mom's fault.
Right. It's not your fault. Not your fault. Yeah.
What?
So exactly. Pass the buck. And what's funny though, is on that note of the millennial thing, right? So it's y'all are what, late 20s? How old are y'all?
26, about to be 27.
And Savon? Yeah. And so, you're all millennials too, right? So here you are, man. You come out into the prime of your life, man. Great recession comes. Boom. Right. 2008, 2010, man, it's lost. Boom, boom, boom. Then, man, you just start to get your feet under you. And what happens? Bam, pandemic happens. And then it's like, but it's like, just contrast that with history, right?
Yeah.
It's like, think about, you guys have probably seen the lines of like, if you were born in like the late, early 20th century, late 19th century, it's like, here you are, you're graduating high school to World War I. Then right after that is a pandemic. Then you start getting your feet under you 10 years later is World War II, right? And freaking the atomic bomb, and then it's mutually assured destruction, right? And so if you look at all these people that have succeeded like during the 20th century, you realize, because I used to have like this fallacy of like believing, oh man, 20th century, that was the time to be alive, all this crap like that. But it's like, dude, it's always the same. It's always going to be pretty much like how it's always been. That's one of Jim Rohn's great sayings. And yeah, man, it's like one meditation that I love that really impacted me greatly that I learned from Brian Tracy. I don't know if you guys have heard of him, self-help author. He's excellent. He's, gold. Anyway, so this was in one of his books. He talks about literally just visualizing this. So not like saying this is how it is or this is how it was or anything. Just visualize this. Is that imagine you are across the universe and you're just, the energy you are as a person or whatever, right? Whatever concept you want to think or believe. And that you chose to be born 1987 with me, 1990, whatever it was for y'all. And you chose to be born to the exact parents in the exact house, in the exact area. And you chose all that. You picked out how you look, everything about you, how tall you are, everything, all your positive points and all your, you chose all of that. And just to visualize you as energy or whatever, and picking that. And man, wow. That has helped me a lot, specifically a couple of years ago, when I was struggling with some different things with my father and whatnot. We're just like, man, I chose my father. I chose my mother. I chose to be born in Athens, Georgia, this little college town in the middle of nowhere. I chose all of that. All right. And then that completely changes for me how I approached everything else from that point. Instead of being, I wish it was this way, or I wish I was born in 1960 because then I would have had the 80s, to rock it, so.
I'm so glad you just went into that because that has actually been one of the cornerstones of my spiritual practice the last several years.
Wow.
Is that idea because for me, it ties a lot into this idea of reincarnation and actualization being the ultimate goal of incarnating and reaching nirvana and all of that is that we come into this accelerator of life that is designed to impart lessons and force you to level up. But you don't always rise to the occasion. Right? But that as you go through this over subsequent iterations, you kind of usually, in a positive sense or in an ideal, every time you come back in the game, you get a little bit better. You still have a little bit of wisdom from that past go around or some things like, fuck that up. All right, let's load it up one more time. Drop me back in, coach. I can do better this time.
Yeah.
And those parameters that we set for ourselves are basically the outside, that 20% that we can't control that we need to actualize that potential that is the 80% that we do control. That's right. Thank you so much for vocalizing
that. That's beautiful, Savon. That's beautiful. One more thing with Ideal, man, that was another visualizing tool that helped me. I think it's from Brian Tracy as well. But is that your ideal is not a distant shore you will arrive at. I don't know where the hell I got that from, actually. But it really, man, because, I'm driven. I have an ideal, right? I want a six-pack. I kind of have a six-pack. I want all this like great stuff. And, but whenever I fall a little bit short or, if the lines in the six-pack aren't as good as I want them to be, right? It's like, man, I'm not hitting my ideal, And so then I would be like, well, do I need to not have ideals, right? Because you get into that whole thing of like, you need not have ideals and all that type of thing. But I think ideals are essential because whenever I've let them go, it's been a horrible life and it's been depressive and I start to lean towards destructive activities. But my ideal and our ideal for ourselves is a guiding star. So it's not going to be a distant shore we're going to arrive at, but by following that star, you will end up in a better position and a better destination than you would if you didn't. And so chasing after that, which you will never catch, you will end up better than if you didn't. And that is just huge to me because I would get so frustrated. I'd be like, oh, the same thing with business too. It's like, oh man, goal is, we're going to do, this many thousand this month. And then you don't hit it. And you're like, oh crap, now what I do. And it's like, well, you might have done better by setting that goal than if you hadn't. And then also, what's the feedback? Obviously, set the goal next time to change and do different. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't set a goal. Maybe the goal was too far. Maybe you didn't do what you need to do, right? Maybe you do something else. But don't fall into the trap of not having an ideal or a target to hit.
Very well said. TED Talk, man.
That's right, man. Well, Sevan, I'm happy to hear about your spiritual practices, man. That's cool. That's awesome. And I love that, I think, it sounds like you're similar on the same course with the almost like utility of spirituality in a sense. And then James, what is your story, man? You militant atheist, you.
I'm just out here trying to figure it all out. I do know that the traditional frame of Christianity, as we commonly accepted it in the Western civilized church, is not one that I subscribe to. I also don't find myself praising traditions and praying to Mother Mary. So I find myself going through more text and maybe doing a little bit of mental masturbation here by reading more. Not quite sure how it all applies yet, but I actually, and I don't want to say interrupted. My spirit wasn't interrupted when I came across Sevan and we started to dive into energy and spirituality, but he sure as hell did open my mind a whole lot. I didn't even think about the divine masculine and the divine feminine at all from an Eastern practice. I didn't think about that spirituality or unicity, capital U unicity, or capital T truth, or capital G God could be something that wasn't defined by a text that was held to a high power from a prophet that is tax exempt. I didn't think that could ever be a thing. Frankly, I mean, I was raised so aggressively Southern Baptist, and God loved my dad and God loved my mom, but they did the best that they could with what they thought were the ideals. And I'm a hell of a better person than a lot of people that I grew up with because I was imparted with that information and that knowledge and that understanding, that guiding light. But I just don't subscribe to it fully. I really don't. I sit in a place where I'm like, I need more information. I need more communication. I need you to not give me a circular argumentation of faith. I need you to not tell me that this all exists because I have to believe you and believe you because someone else is talking to you in the back of your head. Who is the voice inside your head? What does that look like? Is that God? Is that God in you? Is that the Holy Spirit? Does the Holy Spirit exist? Is there a reason that we have a Trinity or triad? Is there something beneficial about doing things in threes? Is this more symbolic of other things that are going on and alignment in the universe? I don't know, but I do know that every time that I come across an individual, maybe it's a romantic partner or what have you, that tries to put me in a box of we believe this, and if you don't believe this, you're gone. I'm like, okay, well, there's the door. I don't know where I'm going. I do know that I'm inquisitive and I'm interested in understanding. I'm interested in having perspective from other people. I'm interested in smarter people than me, more experienced, more tenured individuals in a variety of topics. Beat me over the head with something that I didn't know before, and then let me see if what you're saying makes sense. But I mean, I credit my opening of my mind from a spiritual perspective and energetic perspective, something that I would have thought energy is woo-woo until I met Sevan.
Wow.
And consistently he showed up and consistently spoke from the heart and not directed at me like, hey, James, you need to change. But every time I pulled, he was completely open, non-judgmental, and willing to share every single time.
And man, that touches that greater point of that, Sevan, you were, it's who you are that matters, not always what you say. Right. And, that's where, I know with my wife and I, when we got together, we were both at probably one of the lowest points of our life, both of us. And then when I started to pull myself out of it, I was pulling myself out of it faster than she was. And I would try to tell her, right, do this, do that kind of things that James, you're talking about that, you dealt with. But then what was the biggest change was when I stopped doing that and just actually really started to be that person. And, and then when I would say it, it had more credence and it had more truth behind it. And yeah. And also too, James, I would say too, with any romantic partner you have, everyone else in your relationship you get into, is that, again, like with my wife, she's Jewish by heritage, and not necessarily was a practicing Jew, but now, she's becoming more of that. And we're having those traditions with my daughter. And so it's a funny topic when my daughter asks about God, and I'm just, like, whatever, either way, it's fine. And my wife is developing some type of belief with that. But what's important though is that her and I can be together, and she respects my opinions and beliefs and wants to hear it. And I want to hear her opinions and belief as well. So going with that mutual respect and open-mindedness. But man, James, you know what it is though, man, is that, maybe you are just the eternal inquisitor. What do you think?
I think that's an interesting title, but I think it's beautiful what you just said there, that the two of you maybe believing different things can be together. I've found in every romantic relationship, as I've become more open-minded, it's not always reciprocal. It's not always offered back to me. And while I respect and even have changed my actions, gone to Passion City with my most previous partner, that we were together about a year. I started going to Passion City to support her on Sundays. And I actually took more notes than probably anyone in there, because if I'm going to be here giving you my time, like, let me take something from this.
Yeah. Right?
So like, let me hear, I have my thoughts about Louis Giglio, but let me write down, let me check some of these things. Let me go through this and let me actually show her that I love her enough to come here and support and take this seriously. But it was interesting, and it's really to no fault of her own. In my mind, she's completely conditioned day in, day out by her family.
Right.
And that's something that for a lot of years I was in. And it took me being like, no more. I'm done with that completely. Like, I'm not going to put myself I'm not going to go back and stay for 4 days over Christmas and over Thanksgiving and over this, that, and the other, because my energy is too interrupted. There's too much damage done to me and how I view where I'm at on my path for spending time with people that are not open-minded. So, to no detriment of, well, actually, I think to detriment, but I'm not willing to subscribe that my most recent romantic partner that I was committed to is necessarily a bad person. I don't think that she is. I think that she's got a lot of exploring to do, as we all do. But I think that, through the help of friends and colleagues and our Sunday group that Savon's a part of, I'm forced to look at things from a bunch of different perspectives, no later than 7 days every single time. And I don't have that kind of accountability or community anywhere else. And so that has pushed me into a place where, hey, I either become extremely open-minded and take nothing personally, maybe subscribe to the Hermetic philosophies, right? And some 4 laws of the universe, or I just go crawl in the hole and I'd be done with all this, because I can't be here and show up authentically to these men that are expecting me to come and bring the ferocity that we're going to bring if I'm not open-minded. And they're not open-minded to receive, and I'm not open-minded. It's got to be permeable. It's got to be, a two-way street. And so I just found that, it didn't matter how much I showed up to Passion City. It didn't matter how much I dove in more to the Bible outside of that to bring things to light, because I don't believe that the actual desire was that we grow in Christ. It was that I tick a box that her parents want me to tick.
Yeah.
And it's not even something she wants, because if it was, she would read more. She would talk, you know what I mean? Like, we would talk about sermons. We would dive in, but we did it. It was, hey, my parents don't think you're Christian enough. Hey, my parents are of the mind that you talk about sex too much on the podcast. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that, it's judgment. And cool, you're allowed to be judgmental if you want to, but you're also allowed to just hit the unfollow button, to just not listen. Like, don't torment yourself. If you strongly believe these things, and just remove yourself, man. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too is, right. So Christian, right? They are correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're not supposed to be judgmental. So, right. Jesus hung out with prostitutes. So, don't judge James for hanging out with prostitutes. That's the point.
Yeah. Or as you used to tease me when I was at Kepner, like, you're always with models. You're always with hot girls.
Yeah.
Taking pictures all over the place.
Oh, I mean, I know that's why you were with them. Right?
For sure. Absolutely.
I'm just saying.
I mean, trying to bring visuals to the world now.
I mean, one also too, man, just to be real funny, and I'll hopefully explain this in the right way. It's like, which would I rather? Well, this was one of the reasons why, like, we treat everyone with respect at Kepner. Because, like, when I was coaching, I don't want it to be a place where no one who is an attractive female feels like they can work out there, right? Because, I mean, beautiful people are beautiful, you know? A good-looking freaking guy it's nicer to look at than a horrible slob, you know? And it doesn't mean I'm homosexual. It's just, it's facts, man. Yeah. So, you know? So it's like, which would you rather have? It's like every single beautiful person that comes to your door, you hit on and make feel uncomfortable or whatever, or just be a creep to, and then they don't come. Or just, you know, put yourself in a position where you treat everyone wonderfully, and, you know, you treat those people wonderful as well, so they feel at home to do that. And then the end product is you have a lot of great looking people, and that's great. And you have some people that aren't great looking, and that's fine too. And, you know, their souls are beautiful, but it's like, man, you know, so yeah, it's nice to be around good looking things and people. Right. But obviously it doesn't mean you need to hurt yourself or step away from your greatest virtues by being around it, which, you know, I know you haven't. One thing that I thought about while you're talking was the idea of the Newtonian physics and quantum physics, right?
Ooh, talk that shit, Keith. Let's go.
Well, so maybe that's what it is that what you're saying, like, James, is that, you know, you're in a Newtonian physics land, right? In a sense. And that's, you know, the world that you operate in, and that I operate in too, right? Cause and effect, and I do this and I do that, and it's going to happen, and you can replicate it. But then, just like quantum physics, it's a whole other thing that makes no sense in comparison to that. And so maybe that's what the spiritual realm is, and maybe that's its whole point, is it's not supposed to make sense in relation to, quote, real world, which steps outside the definition of even real, right? And so maybe it's just that type of dichotomy that exists where, you know, it's like, dude, quantum does not work on a large level, and Newtonian does not work on a quantum level. And same thing goes with religion and reason. Those two things don't go together. Belief doesn't go together with reason, because belief and reason are opposites, right? You know, you shouldn't have reason because you have belief, you know? So yeah, it's just, and that's something like with the scientific method, which I'm in love with the scientific method, because I believe it's the savior of humanity when applied correctly, is that, you know, objective truth. But there are also places where that does not apply.
Sounds like this whole podcast and everything that we've talked about thus far can be parsed down into it depends.
Yes. Well, hey, isn't that true
Depends.
though? Right?
Yeah.
So it's like with boxing, man. It's like with the sport of boxing, just to wrap it all up in a nice package. With the sport of boxing, it's like, should you jab? Right? You know, James, you remember the jab's most important punch of boxing, and Savon, I'm sure you know that as well. The jab's most important punch of boxing, that straight lead hand, right? It's going to do this for you, it's going to do that for you, it's everything. Now, is there a time to not jab? Yeah, there are some times you don't need a jab, and you shouldn't jab. I remember one time my wife was sparring this 16-year-old kid, really strong boy, who's basically a man. And every time my wife was jabbing, he was coming over with a crazy looping right hand shot and cracking her. And so I told her, hey, Lisa, like, let's just stop jabbing and just, you know, walk in and tear him up. And she did that. And she tore him up, beat the hell out of him. And then afterwards, I went over to my dad, because he and I were still talking at the time. I said, hey, you know, what'd you think about that? You know, because everyone was like, wow, like, Lisa just beat the hell out of this, like, really in shape, you know, young man. And he was like, yeah, she did good. She did good. She could have jabbed more. She could have jabbed more. I was like, man, like, didn't you see she was getting nailed every time she was jabbing? But so, you know, it's just that example of that. It's like, it depends, man. It depends. It's all an art. And yeah. But, you know, what's important, though, is that we all don't bullshit ourselves, right? And we don't mistake movement for achievement. On that note, we should probably wrap it up, because I got to actually get some achievement going on.
Love it. That was perfect. Thank you, Keith. This was epic.
One last thing here. Where can everybody find you? What do you want them to know? And anything else you want to leave us with?
So you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Just Keith Kepner or Coach Keith Kepner on Instagram. If business is around that someone has interest in, and like if I was going to start a business right now, I'd probably buy into a franchise. So it's a great opportunity nowadays. And nowadays, it's funny. There's so many reasons not to do something. Like, oh man, inflation. I'm worried about inflation. Well, guess what? The greatest thing you can do with your money, if you're worried about inflation, is not buying gold. I did that in 2008. Is to invest it in something you have control over. So why not start your own business? Whether you start your own business as a one-off, that's something you designed, or you buy into a franchise, those are great opportunities. And all the things that we all invest in as people that have started different groups and organizations and businesses is provided with you with good franchises, and that's what we offer with Kepner Boxing. So I just implore anybody that has an interest in entrepreneurship and fitness or in boxing or in helping people to just take a look at our brand that we're committed to, and I'm committed to, and dedicated my life to scaling up.
Cool. That's great. Yeah. As always, guys, you can find us on YouTube, full length snippet video on YouTube if you want to see our mugs, audio everywhere that you can find audio. And if you're on IG, you will see these snippets. We have about 3,000 moments that we can yank of Keith today here. So you will see him on 80/20 there. Thank y'all so much for coming out and listening and giving us your time. And we will see you next time. Peace.
Peace.